Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum and magandang hapon sa ating lahat, especially sa ating Professor Dr. Muhammad Fahim Al-Yudin, sir. Assalamualaikum. Mga classmates, this time I'm going to discuss the assigned topic to me, which is the number chapter 57, entitled the role of cities and the problems or the urban giantism problems. Now, before determining the role of cities, I think we have to identify what are those types of economies they adopt, because according to Kofi Annan, the former Secretary General of the United Nations, to him, cities will increasingly become the main players of the global economy, no? So ang city pala is malaking papel na ginagampanan sa global economy. Okay, classmates, we have to define first the cities, no? So an economic definition of a city is an area with relatively high population density that contains a set of closely related activities. I think we have to identify what are those economies. Number one is agglomeration economies. So these agglomeration economies, refers to the benefits received by the firms and people when they come together to make use of the advantages offered by the urban cities that prove helpful to them. So under sa agglomeration economies, mga classmates, they have two types of economies they have. Number one is urbanization economies and the localization economies. So before emphasizing each economies in which agglomeration economies has possessed, the best example is in Dubai, which is the best industrial sectors and agglomerates with all Asian countries and other countries for economic growth, which had resulted in the industrial growth and the educational growth. In urbanization economies, it will arise when the size of the city leads to an increase in the productivity. For example, in Los Angeles, it exemplifies urbanization economies in that it has no single dominant industry. So yet it continues to grow. Firms which locate in the LA or the Los Angeles benefit from the common resources and large labor pool found in the city. So example of urbanization economy, classmates, no? Para maintindihan masyado, no? Ang tinatawag na urbanization economies. Example is when firms, especially corporate headquarters, clusters in cities, to share firms that provide business services like marketing, accounting, and legal services. Siguro magtataka kayo kung what is mean by urbanization literally. So urbanization refers to the concentration of human population into discrete areas. So this concentration leads to the transformation of a land for residential, commercial, industrial, and transportation purposes. So in other words, it can include densely populated centers. So ibig sabihin sa kalagitnaan, sa karamihan ng tao, I should say, no? So as well as their adjacent peri-urban or suburban fringe. So, siguro, there arise questions like, how does urbanization affect business? Siguro may mga question na lilitaw na ganun, no? So, practically, urbanization affect businesses because the increase in population in urban areas create a skilled workforce, no, that attracts transnational corporations, creating jobs. For example, in call centers, no, and software mills. So this increases the wealth of the country, and through the multiplier effect, and also creates jobs for less skilled people. So, ibig sabihin, malaking contribution ang urbanization in the business sector. So, may mga katanungan din, no? Sabi, how does urbanization affect the economy? Sa economy naman tayo, kanina sa business naman, no? So, in economy, it permits external scale and scope economies and reduces transactions costs and allows specialization among firms, so leading to low cost of productions. Another component of the agglomeration economies, which is the localization economies. The question is it the solution? Well, let's imagine, no, a very different world, one in which most of your food comes from a nearby farmer who ensure food security year-round, in which children are free to explain their word safely under the watch of neighbor whom you trust. Imagine the money you spend on everyday goods continuing to recirculate in the local economy. So imagine also local businesses prevailing or providing ample, meaningful employment opportunities. So localization is about bringing the economy back to human scale. In other words, it is the process of building economic structures that allow the goods and services a community needs to be produced locally and regionally whenever possible. So this can strengthen community cohesion and lead to greater human health and material well-being. So all while reducing pollution and degradation of the natural world. So may mga tanong, no, that may arise, like, localization is not about ending all trade. Ano sa palagay ng mga classmates? So, communities can still export surpluses once local needs are met, and they can still import goods that can't be produced locally. But localization allows local, regional, and even national self-reliance to replace dependence on distant, unaccountable corporations. Kumbaga, di na tayo aasa pa sa mga multinational corporations, kumbaga, no? So, may sabi pa nga dito na localization does not mean total isolation, no? Bakit kaya? Because localized economies are a reflection of particular cultures, resources, and needs, but they still encourage the free exchange of knowledge and ideas across borders. So in fact, classmates, localization requires international cooperation and collaboration to address global problems like climate change and to forge agreements to scale back the rapacious power of global corporations and banks. So, classmate, after determining or recognizing the components of the agglomeration economies, which is the urbanization economies and localization economies, we have also three sources of agglomeration economies. So what are they? So these are all the sources of agglomeration economies. Number one is linkages between intermediate and final good suppliers. Number two is labor market interactions. And the third sources of agglomeration economies, which is the knowledge spillovers. Okay, classmate, let us briefly discuss these different sources of agglomeration. Number one is linkages between intermediate and final goods suppliers. So what is mean by this? Well, classmates, when we say intermediate goods and final good suppliers, those are goods which are used as a factor of production to produce goods which have the ability to satisfy wants. So for this purpose, they undergo the production process. Ibig sabihin, kumbaga, hindi pa siya finished product. Kumbaga, raw materials pa, kumbaga. So on the contrary naman, final goods are those goods that which are readily available to sell to the ultimate consumer of the product. So ibig sabihin, finished product na siya, ready to use na. For example, no, sasakyan. Think of a car, which is a final product. However, the parts used to manufacture a car, halimbawa, success, gear lever, tires, steering wheel, windscreen, seat belt, speedometer, bumpers, headlight, radiator, and so many more are all intermediate. So, malino classmates, no, yung intermediate and final goods. Intermediate goods yung mga raw materials, kumbaga. Whereas final goods ay yung mga finished product, no? Number two, sources of agglomeration economies, which is the labor market interactions. So what is mean by this, mga classmates? So when we say labor market interactions, this is the interactions refers to the supply of and demand for labor. So in which employees provide the supply and employers provide the demand. So kumbaga, the employee and employers relationship. So it is a major component of any economy and is intricately linked to markets for capital, goods, and services. So malinaw, no? Ang interactions or labor market interactions. So number three, the knowledge spillover. What is mean by this? No? When we say term spillover, kumbaga, nag-overflow na or kumbaga flash flood, no? So, paano? How come na mayroong knowledge spillover? So, in knowledge spillovers, it occurs when recipient firms exploit knowledge that has been originally developed by another firms. So, for example, classmates, no? Originating firms, halimbawa itong Glee teaches in 1992, these recipient firms may be alliance partners, direct competitors of the originating firm from other industrial sectors. So, kumbaga mayroong kompetensya ba? No? Okay, alright, classmate. Let us go to urban, the urban giantism problem. What do you mean by this, mga classmates? Before identifying these problems, mga classmates, when we say the urban giantism, this is the phenomenon of urban settlements growing disproportionately large in size due to the rapid immigration of people from other areas to these urban settlements. No? How can we solve urban problems? May mga tanong na mag-a-arise katulad niya, no? So this involve local community in local government. Reduce air pollution by upgrading energy use and alternative transport system. Create private-public partnership to provide services such as waste disposal and housing. Diba, magtanim ng punong kahoy, plant trees, and incorporate the care of city green space as a key element in urban planning. So what are those causes of urban giantism? Yeah? Basically, import substitution, industrialization. So less trade, incentive to concentrate in a single city largely to avoid transportation cost. So in other words, mostly firms want to remain within the capital cities or other existing urban giants, which are all too often overpopulated and find their resources straining. For example, classmate, no? Sa New York, in New York, ito yung pinaka largest metropolitan area in the United States of America. So however, according to the US Census Bureaus, these are only 19,541,453 people living in New York State as a whole. So compared to 307,600,550 people in the US as a whole, that is in 2000 estimates, census. So that is approximately 6% of the national population in the United States of America. The causes and effects of urbanizations, what are those? Well, actually, there are two causes of urbanization. Are natural population increase, number one, and rural to urban migration. Ibig sabihin, when we say migration, yung tinatawag nilang within the area alone, from transfer from one place to another within the area. So that is migrations. So in other words, urbanization affects all sizes of settlements, from small villages to towns to cities, leading up to the growth of the mega cities, which have more than 10 million people. So ganun katindi, no? Okay, classmates, if you have some clarifications, you may raise it after watching this video report of mine. You can also contribute or give any suggestions to improve the assigned topic to me. So I think that's all. That's end my report, classmates. And wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good day sa ating lahat.